This video covers the patronage and design of the College of San Giovannino, also known as San Giovanni Evangelista. It's one of the first Jesuit colleges. It was designed over time, 1579 to 1592, to accommodate changes in space constraints. The Jesuit order was founded recently in 1540 by Ignatius of Loyola. This order of Catholic faith was called the Society of Jesus. Jesuit teachings emphasize spreading Catholic faith by education and guidance, public preaching, teaching children and the unlettered, hearing confessions, penance, and Eucharist. And for this group, salvation was ideally achieved by meditation on Christ's life and examining one's conscience, and this is called spiritual exercises. To be sure new colleges met needs, the Jesuits created a supervisory body. Have a look at the spelling here. It's headed by a general who approved all plans before construction could begin. Jesuits arrived in Florence in 1551, and they wanted a community for 12 members. Duke Cosimo I de' Medici donated this medieval church in 1554. It was in a good location, but in bad condition. It was too small. Florentine followers were growing, and the church became overcrowded. The church also suffered noise from nearby taverns and workshops, and also had unsanitary conditions with humid cellars. They couldn't afford to look for new space. The Jesuit order doesn't accept payment for ministry, and they don't sell indulgences like the Catholic churches did. Benefactors' names and coats of arms are not allowed on display. In 1566, a committee of supportive citizens formed to find a solution. Bartolomeo Ammannati, the architect, got involved soon after. General Francis Borgia decided to expand the church complex. Ammannati proposed to design and cover some expenses.
When we take a look at the revised plan of 1590, it is clear that Ammannati was designing with space and circulation in mind. Given the setbacks that the Jesuits encountered in acquiring land, the entire complex was redesigned to fit onto the original footprint. The education of its members was extremely important to the Jesuits, as well as regular confessions and visible progress made in prayer and church services. Despite the space constrictions, Ammannati was able to keep the layout of the complex on par with Jesuit ideals. The typical Jesuit college was built around a centralized courtyard, which also served to divide the public and private spaces. The lower level was open to all Jesuits and contained common areas such as a kitchen, refectory, and storage space, with the second floor remaining private to the college. It was on the second floor that the dormitories were located, along with narrow passages and secret staircases that could be used to discreetly move within the complex. On the attic level, oratories, also known as carretti, were fitted between the pilasters of the nave. These carretti served as more private areas for prayer and provided the Jesuits with quiet space high above the layman crowds. Taking a look at the church itself, we see that a single nave was used. The single nave had become quite popular again in the 16th century and was reminiscent of early Christian church design. With the growing popularity of the single nave, choir screens had also become a thing of the past. Jesuits placed a lot of emphasis on the transparency of their services and felt that the clergy and priests should be visible to all. An open nave was also ideal for preaching. In today's world, it is hard to imagine that confession was once treated like a business, with various facts competing against each other. The Jesuits quickly gained a monopoly on confessions as they were free and were notorious for being more forgiving than other branches of the church. Ammannati included a total of 8 confessionals, which also promoted volume and a growing support base. Instead of the classic confessional design in which they were freestanding booths, Ammannati incorporated them into the niches between the pilasters. The voids in between each confessional served as chapels for prayer and made use of every inch of the space. Compared with the rest of the complex, the church was quite large and uncluttered. As important as education was to the Jesuits, the service itself was still the priority. Due to this importance, Ammannati felt justified in building a large cupola above the altar, which actually cut into the living quarters on the second floor. Other changes made included the relocation of the tabernacle to the high altar. The tabernacle was where the Eucharist was held and needed to be a more important aspect of the Mass. It would have been elaborately decorated, made from exotic inlaid woods and gilded accents. The symmetry of the structure continued on the exterior facade, where Ammannati aligned the central entrance perfectly with the high altar. If you are thinking the facade looks familiar, it is because much of the inspiration was drawn from Michelangelo's Laurentian library. Upon the completion of the complex, its design was hailed as being a stunning example of space and resource management. It was thought that all architects needed to design with this attitude regardless of space constrictions. The innovations seen at the San Giovannino in the ways of the chapel and confessional organization continued to be played upon for at least 2 centuries, with the latest example being the Santa Maria del Carmine of 1771. This is very important because it demonstrated that churches could also be adapted and essentially reinvented to suit any needs. As far as the Jesuits were concerned, the use of space and restricted finances were common themes in their endeavors, plaguing them until the gradual demise of their order in the early 19th century.